in order for us to live the life that we're meant to live, with the blessings that we're meant to have, with the direction that we're meant to have, you have to be constantly desiring and open to these messages.
Before resuming this week's episode, we'd like to invite you to attend a free women's circle hosted by Monica Berg on January 31st at 3 p.m. Pacific time. You can expect us to be diving into our fears, sharing stories, and discovering our inner strength that may still be undiscovered. Hope you'll join us for this very unique, very special event. Mark your calendars for January 31st. Details and links in the episode's description. See you there.
Welcome to Spiritually Hungry.
You got a lot of energy today.
I do, actually. All right. So are you ready? Because I feel like you're a little distracted. I'm kind of just waiting for you to be present.
Completely present.
In July of 2006, a waitress in Westlake, Ohio, asked a customer who ordered a drink to present her ID. But what the server received shocked her. It was her own stolen driver's license. This waitress's wallet had been stolen for a few weeks earlier in another town. So instead of bringing drinks to the table, guess what she brought?
Police?
The police, who arrested the thief. But think about it for a second. I mean, I think it's a really interesting story because what is the likelihood of this series of events playing out? There are so many moving parts. Details like Westlake's sizable population and many restaurants to choose from. The fact that the theft occurred in a different town. The waitress worked that specific schedule. The probability of her even serving this particular customer who just so happened to order alcohol. The likelihood of this having occurred was close to impossible. So was this a coincidence or was it synchronicity? And that is our focus of today. What do you think it is? What if I speak in like different tones the whole time? Would you be entertained? Like different voices?
Probably confused and entertained at the same time.
I like to keep you on your toes, Mike. So is it a coinkydink or is it
of course not. I mean, right. So the bigger idea here is, and
you don't believe in foreplay. Like you always like to go straight to the deep, like
completely inappropriate.
It's not appropriate at all. It's like I like to tease a little bit, and banter, and then all of a sudden you want to go like into the deep Kabbalistic wisdom, which it really should come in about, I'd say 15 minutes, sure. Maybe 10.
I have nothing deep to say. Only shallow. All I can do is share some shallow.
Go ahead. What were you going to say?
No. Only thoughts that are coming to mind are very shallow ones.
Were you going to go into deep wisdom?
I was.
Yes,
I was.
Of course
I'm sorry.
you were.
I
Okay,
apologize.
I know you will. Synchronicity for those who aren't.
Isn't that the most important thing in life, though?
I mean, it is, but also people learn better when they're entertained and they learn through stories and science, and then you bring it all together, and then Shazam, you present the deep wisdom, and then it's like, oh yeah, you want to open people up.
Yeah, I hear you.
Before you give them sometimes a big pill to swallow.
It's not a big pill at all. I think it's a beautiful, deep wisdom and understanding.
Okay, now everybody wants to hear it.
No.
Okay, great. So synchronicity, for those who aren't super clear, is a collision of events where something other than the probability of chance is involved. And the confluence feels meaningful. It's an event where needs are met, people encountered, where things just come together perfectly when we need them. Psychologist Carl Jung believed that life is not a series of random events, and like synchronicities, are the expression of the deeper order that underlies our lives.
Yeah, I think, by the way, so I think it's really interesting.
Like dreams, instances of synchronicity have meaning and can even provide guidance. Go ahead, you were interrupting. What were you saying?
No, I was going to say that I think it's very interesting that really this word, this term, this concept comes from Carl Jung, right? Who's very relatively well regarded thinker, psychoanalyst. And there's a lot of it. I think maybe it's important to touch upon a little bit of where science comes in here.
Oh, foreplay.
What are you doing? But I think that the spiritual aspect of it, or what I would say is more what we all know to be true, is as important, or if not more powerful. My hope for our listeners in listening to this podcast is that they really become both more aware and really open themselves up to see the synchronicities that are going on around them all the time.
And it's exciting because
if I can take this moment to go just a little bit deeper. I think you have to, and this is something we have spoken about before, have a I don't know if the word specific, but a specific way of viewing what some people would call God, right? We don't, that's a weird term because it has many different meanings to many different people. The spiritual view is this, that there's a force that is behind creation, and that same force continues to push forward both each individual and the world towards a positive end, right? We'll call it growth, transformation, change. I think part of the reason why people can find it difficult to think of, is God talking to me, which is basically the question we're asking, is that if you see that being as being a being, then it's got to be a very busy being, right? Talking to you, talking to me, talking to 8 billion people. It's that the logic of that is I think a little hard to accept.
Also, when you set it up like that, it sounds like something that's separate from you, which is not what God is.
Right, it's not separate from you, but it is greater than you.
Yeah.
Right. So if you understand that the nature of reality takes into it as well an understanding of this force, again, that created everything and that keeps pushing everything, so that there's actually a flow to life. There's a flow to my life. There's a flow to your life. There's actually a direction into which we're going and an end goal to which we're aspiring, and that we are being supported by this force, which can be compared to the force of gravity, to all the forces that we know of nature. And I would argue greater than all those together. But when you start viewing that creative force as this flow of energy, therefore, it's not so much that God is saying, oh, I'm going to talk to you, Monica, today. It's just that there is this constant force that is desiring to bring us to a more elevated state. We'll call it an end goal. And then, of course, it makes much more sense. It's like saying it's like saying, if you didn't know the way the currents of rivers flow and you jump into a river or you're in a canoe and a boat in the river and suddenly taking you like, oh my God, who's doing this, right? And they keep doing, and they're doing it for me and they're doing it for that boat next to me and they're doing it for that boat. No, of course not. We don't view it that way. There is this force that's taking all of us in this direction. Well, that's, I think, a very important way by which to view, again, you can call that force God, you can give it whatever name you can call it the creator, but that, of course, then it makes much more logical sense that flow is directing me and can come into my mind, it can come into my world, but it's not this sort of happenstance that God says, oh, today I'm going to give you this sign, right? And when you view it like that, am I going too deep?
No.
Okay, good. And when you view it like that, then it isn't so much so that I have to accept that today God chose to speak to me by this occurrence or that coincidence. It's that it's actually happening all the time. And I'm probably missing 90% of the messages, of the directions, of the quote unquote coincidences. I see 1%, 10%, 5%, whatever that number is. And what I'd like to ask our listeners to do is to really frame their lives in this way. And with that, not think about the coincidences as, an occurrence every once in a while, but that actually these synchronicities are a constant part of our lives that we are most of the time unaware of. And you want to open yourself up to this reality, and then you'll start seeing more and more of these synchronicities.
Right, because I think sometimes many people go through life seeing these kinds of appearances, situations as being random. And the spiritual view is very much like Carl Jung's, and that nothing is random, that everything has a meaning and a purpose in the universe. Sometimes we'll understand it, sometimes we won't. And it reminds me...
I'm raising my hand for those of you who are not watching the podcast but listening.
Are you going to add, or are you going to change the subject?
I was going to add.
Okay, go ahead.
I was going to add. There's so much to add. But I'll just add one more idea.
Well, no, I was going to give an example to the idea that I was just sharing.
Go for it. Maybe if I remember it.
Oh, Michael.
Go for it.
So imagine you're driving on a rural road, and in the distance you see that there's a small fire burning on top of a mountain. Do you get out and climb the mountain to investigate? Unless it's your property or you're a firefighter, most likely you're not. You're going to say, oh, I wonder what that is. I'm not that curious. And you move on. But it reminds me of the story in Exodus of Moses who saw the burning bush and went to investigate, which resulted in Moses taking off his shoes and having a really necessary, important conversation with the Creator. So imagine if Moses had dismissed the small fire as unrelated to him entirely, just a mere coincidence. So I think many of us notice things, but we don't actually pause and take them seriously. We choose to believe it has nothing to do with us, or that it's not really for us, even the things that are right in front of us. And funnily enough, yesterday, Miriam, our daughter, called, she FaceTimed me, and she's like, I'm at a glasses store, I'm trying on glasses. And she had the really big glasses on. She's like, and I'm thinking to myself, well, I hope this isn't the selection. But she's like, look at these glasses that I have on. She's like, don't they look just like your dad's, my father, right? And so she's like, and look at this. And she takes me to, on the wall, and they have the names of all the glasses. So that specific glasses that my father wore all the time, the name of it was Abe, and that's my father's name. Funny. And I just I thought about that today, even brought a big smile on my face for two reasons. Obviously, I felt like my father was saying hello.
To our listeners who don't know, your father's name was Abraham.
I just said that was his name. Yeah, you were too busy thinking about your next idea.
I don't remember you saying that.
That was my father's name, Abe. Yes. And so I felt like he was saying hi to me, but also it was a beautiful moment with Miriam that she also saw it as a sign of something, and then wanted to call me and FaceTime me right away.
Nice.
She picked different glasses, by the way.
And again, I just go
ahead, sweetie.
So I think that's so important again, because some people might look at that and say, well, really, God woke up this morning, right? If you looked at previous to what we said before, God woke up this morning and said, I'm going to give Monica and Miriam a sign. So I'm going to have Warby Parker call this, but it must have happened a long time ago. They didn't decide today. But anyway, right. So it makes it much less believable. It's really
cool though, because it's like how he, Abe, A-B-E, it's how he went. He didn't go by Abraham or even Ibrahim. He didn't go, exactly.
But the point, if you understand that that's actually the natural state of things. So by the way, there's another 100 things that happened today that you didn't notice, right? That were in that direction. I find this personally very exciting and inspiring, and I hope our listeners as well, because it makes much more sense, I believe. And I like when things make logical sense, or at least come close to being logical, in that what we're seeing, those synchronicities are, again, a small portion of what's actually happening, because the flow of the creative energy of this world is always in that way beyond what is natural and natural occurrences. And if I can, what I wanted to add, which I think, again, related to everything we just said, that if you understand that these are not only a part of life, but they're a necessary part, which means if we, like the story you told about Moses, most of us know this biblical story. And like you said, had Moses missed that burning bush, millions of people would have suffered. We would not have received, what's called the Bible, one of the most important books ever revealed in this world, and so on and so forth. But that's happening to you and me and to all of us every day. Mm-hmm. We're missing the signs. We're missing the synchronicities. So it is not, it's nice to get sort of this message like you received yesterday from your father. It's not, when it happens. No. In order for us to live the life that we're meant to live, with the blessings that we're meant to have, with the direction that we're meant to have, you have to be constantly desiring and open to these messages, because it's almost like going on a journey without a map. These messages, these synchronicities, are actually the map from the creative force of the universe to direct us in the right place. And if you're not growing in your ability to see them, to observe them, to receive them, and to understand them, you're missing so much of the direction that you're meant to be having in life, and you can wind up in the wrong place.
Yeah, I mean, I often find myself looking for these kinds of breadcrumb trails, right? And even especially in my dreams, I'll wake up, and if I have a feeling and I feel different when I wake up, I'll actually go back and look through the dream and say, okay, was there something I'm supposed to pay attention? Can I share something
completely unrelated?
Yes.
It's about dreams. You reminded me. You're my muse. You're my inspiration. So you said So you just reminded me that, last night before you went to sleep, you shared with me something you were not happy about.
I did.
You did. and then I remember, I just remembered now that I had dreams not sad, but sort of dreams that were like, I wasn't so happy, like a little bit sad dreams. And I woke up this morning saying, why? And then I realized the reason I had sad dreams, not your fault. It's that I heard you unhappy about something.
Had empathy.
And that, exactly, my empathy bled into my dreams and I had unhappy dreams.
Oh, that's good. I gave it to you because I slept actually pretty okay.
Good. That's probably why I took all of that. I took all of that negativity into my dreams.
I actually woke up I woke up in a chipper mood, and I was
there. You go. Now you know.
And I was on the other side of it.
That's not a coincidence. That is synchronicity. No, I believe that. By the way, I believe that.
Yeah, I do too. Thank you. You took one for the team.
Yeah.
I love this story that speaks to breadcrumb trails. It's about an athlete. His name is Kevin, and he was living in Melbourne, Australia, when he began seeing a physical therapist about a leg injury. During his intake visit, the physical therapist asked Kevin if he had ever had damage to his right knee. Kevin very confidently denied the history of a knee injury, which surprised the PT. The physical therapist got Kevin set up with a heating pad and then went to check on another patient. As Kevin lay on the treatment table, he looked around the room and he noticed a print on the wall. Something about it felt familiar. It took a few moments, but he finally recognized the building and the image. When the physical therapist returned, Kevin asked him about the print on the wall. Kevin explained that he recognized it from his childhood. The physical therapist said that he had done some of his training at the Royal Edinburgh Infirmary. Apparently, Kevin's family had lived in Edinburgh for a while when he was a boy. His father had actually taken him to that very hospital after he'd hurt his knee playing soccer. Kevin was grateful for that serendipitous moment because if he hadn't seen that image on the wall, he actually wouldn't have remembered the injury. And the doctor had asked that, the physical therapist had asked that right beforehand. And then when he had that information, then the physical therapist actually better able to help him than if he had not had that.
Interesting.
Right. So it's those moments of like, he didn't have to be curious about it. He didn't have to, even ask the question. But I think often in life, we kind of just go through it without looking for those breadcrumbs. I think that's the best way to put it.
Yeah. And it reminds me of something, I'm not sure if I shared this on the podcast, but I know that I find this a very both important and inspiring idea that, actually, I think I shared this last podcast, but I think it's important if it's a repetition.
Was it really just like last week? You probably should pick a different example.
No, I think it's important enough so our listeners will know. Right, the story of Abraham, most of us know the story of Abraham, that he was the first, we'll call him spiritual revolutionary at his time, sort of really created the revolution of Judeo-Christian tradition. And it says that God speaks to Abraham. And the commentators, Kabbalists, ask the question, why did God choose Abraham? There's no indication of any, at least in the biblical story, of anything special that was about Abraham. It just almost seems out of the blue, God speaks to Abraham. And the answer that is given is that God was speaking to everybody. It was just Abraham who was listening. And that idea that to know that in this moment, right now, you and I are getting countless messages. And throughout our day, every one of our listeners, there's going to be that, call it the voice of God, but really call it synchronicity. These occurrences, and the more open you are, the more clearly you will see them, and more importantly, receive the messages from them. By the way, I think that's part of the reason, not the only reason, but when people are in a state of darkness or deep sadness or negative thoughts, they feel more lost than ever. It's because they're so weighted by that heaviness, that reality, that they can't hear the thing that's the positive, what's right in front of them, what's above. I know that it's almost like, I felt like that after my father passed and Karen had passed. It was such a difficult time, and it was close together, their passings, but I felt like I had blinders on, and more than anything, I wanted to connect to the light, but it was harder than ever. And I really think that that's why. For sure. I wanted to share a little bit of Jung's thoughts, how science plays into the idea of synchronicity. Isn't that cute that we were both going to talk about the same thing? You were going to talk about this? Well, I brought up Carl Jung earlier. Yes. That is not coincidence. So, writer L.K. Kerr writes, Jung also looked to modern physics to understand the nature of synchronicity and attempted to adapt many ideas in this field to accommodate his conception of synchronicity, including the property of numinosity. And I'd like to talk about numinosity a little bit in a minute, but He worked closely with Nobel Prize-winning physicist Wolfgang Pauli and also consulted with Albert Einstein. The notion of synchronicity shares with modern physics the idea that under certain conditions, the laws governing the interactions of space and time can no longer be understood according to the principle of causality. In this regard, Jung joined modern physicists in reducing the conditions in which the laws of classical mechanics apply. And there's this idea of entanglement, which is spoken about, studied in quantum physics, the idea that even when particles are separated, they seem to have an influence one on the other. There's the famous quote from Albert Einstein that I often like quoting, which is, spooky actions at a distance.
Mm-hmm.
And it's when you start seeing, that it's, again, I believe this idea of synchronicity is something that we all feel to be true. It's also interesting to see sort of the scientific, I would call them sprouting of this idea. But when Carl Jung was thinking about this and writing about this in the 30s, one of the interesting ideas, which I think is worth discussing, is numinosity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's based on a German theologian and philosopher, Rudolf Otto. And he wrote a book in 1917 called Das Heilig, which is printed in English in the translation as The Idea of the Holy. And
it's interesting.
Yeah. So and the book came out in 1923 in English, 1917 in German. And this is what he writes. Non-rational, non-sensory experience, what he calls the idea of the holy, or is that it's a non-rational, non-sensory experience or feeling whose primary and immediate object is outside the self. This mental state presents itself as ganz ander in German, or the object that is the wholly other, a condition absolutely sui generis and incomparable, whereby the human being finds himself or herself utterly abashed. The feeling of it may at times come sweeping like a gentle tide, pervading the mind with a tranquil mood of deepest worship. So it's a spiritual experience is what he's talking about. It may pass over into a more set and lasting attitude of the soul, continuing as it were thrillingly vibrant and resonant, until at last it dies away and the soul resumes its quote-unquote profane, non-religious, or I would say non-spiritual mood of everyday experience. Mm-hmm. It has its crude, barbaric antecedents and early manifestations, and again it may be developed into something beautiful and pure and glorious. It may become the hushed trembling and speechless humility of the creature in the presence of whom, or what? In the presence of that which is a mystery, inexplicable, and above all creatures. And the idea is, beautiful. So when Rudolf Otto develops this idea of numinosity, which is basically a spiritual experience, it correlates, at least in Jung's thought, with synchronicity. Because if there is this force that allows us to have experiences that are not tied to the physical, then clearly there's that force that can cause synchronicity, or two occurrences occurring that seem not to be related or correlated or causal, but they are related because of this underlying force. So I thought it was interesting that and again, a lot can be said about this, and not to go too deeply into it, but that Carl Jung, a lot of his thought around synchronicity was developed based on this concept of numinosity, which is the spiritual experience that we've all had at different times in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, as you were reading that, I got the chills. I started thinking about times I felt that, and it really does transcend wherever you're at in that moment. It really takes you out of this world and in that day-to-day existence and transports you. Yeah.
And one more thing in this regard before I go back to synchronicity, but that me and you were at a wedding a few weeks ago, and I shared a concept which I think is so beautiful, because I always try to, steer away from, because religion to some people, although of course its roots are spiritual, can be misunderstood. The word holy, which is the one that Rudolf Otto uses, right? And so the Kabbalists explain, what does the word holy mean, right? If you ask anybody, the closest thing to it would be Rudolf Otto's, concept of numinosity. But in simple terms, holy is anything that is eternal, that never goes away. Marriage is holy, right? Love holy, hopefully, right? Real love, right? Of course, unfortunately, love can go away. And I think that hopefully part of what we inspire within our listeners in this episode is to really live that life that is experiencing the real energies that are all around us, and not just, tied to what we call in the Western world, sort of reality, right? Or the material world. And with that, one more quote from Carl Jung.
Interesting, because as you're speaking, it's those little moments, I think, that they're like whispers. Again, like the breadcrumbs. It's not even like, this is not, I mean, maybe it's not a great example, but it's just to show how we should pay attention. I was walking down the stairs this morning, and I noticed cobwebs on the wall sconce. And then I was like, I should clean that. I was like, okay, I'm too tired. It was early in the morning. I go downstairs, make a cup of coffee. And I was like, oh, so there was a spider in my house. What kind of spider it was? Like, it took me to a place. Now, it's not a great story. But
I get it.
But the point is, right, it's those moments where like you notice something and you don't then we don't really give it another thought because it's not in what our intention is to do in that moment, or what our goal is, or what our focus is. And so we just ignore it, right? So I paid attention to the web, and then the spider web, and then I started to think more about it. That's kind of how we want to approach, obviously something
because
more
what it does,
spider webs. But
what you're saying, which I think is so beautiful, is that really the purpose of seeing synchronicity is to be tied more closely to the web of true reality, that energy that is really, as we said before, driving us. But if we don't take the time to think about it, so you literally in that moment, your consciousness took you to a spider, to a web, to the natural way of things.
Yeah.
Which ties in exactly with this quote that I wanted to share from Carl Jung. He says, the East bases much of its science on this irregularity and considers coincidences as the reliable basis of the world rather than causality. Synchronism is the prejudice of the East. Causality is the modern prejudice of the West. And I think the idea is that synchronicity is one benefit when you start living within the realm of what I would call the natural state of things. That includes the understanding of this force that is directing us and bringing us towards growth, change, and transformation, and a better place.
It takes us out of our day-to-day and our errands and our lists and our projects and our commitments, and so much so, we're in that realm. We lose sight of the bigger picture, and synchronicity is what takes us back to and helps us realign to our highest self and our truest purpose. Yeah.
I would add a caveat, which is good news, bad news, however you hear it, is that, of course, being as this force that is bringing about these synchronicities is one that is meant to be bringing us towards growth and transformation, the less in tune our life is with our true soul's purpose, the less we will be aware of them. And of course, the less we will be able to receive those messages, right? So just to use an extreme example, if somebody's goal in life is to steal as much money as he can from other people, synchronicity and that force is not going to be supporting him. He or she will not be receiving the messages. Of course, that's an extreme example, but one tool we said before is you have to be open to it. You have to know that these messages are coming to you and that they're not coincidental. But also,
you need to be aligned.
You have to be aligned, exactly.
With
where are you going?
Mm-hmm.
Where are you directing your life? If you're not directing your life to, I would say, the expression of your soul, of your essence, of your light, and becoming a better person all the time, you're not going to be getting these messages. And certainly, you will not be able to be understanding them. So the two very important prerequisites to truly be able to, and like we said before, you want to be growing in your receiving of these messages, is one, yes, you have to be open to them. And second, you have to make sure that you're aligning your life more and more and more towards growth, change, transformation.
So I would like for our listeners to try one thing this coming week. For one day, I would say every day for the week, but let's say for one day, look at everything as being purposeful. Look around at the simplicity of everything around you. Many of us can point to our life successes and attribute them to part of our laser beam focus. But I'm saying for one day or for 1 week, stop doing that. Instead, look around and be open to seeing what is there, not just what you're looking for to expect to be there. Stop mentally going over your schedule, your task list, and your worries while you do this. Allow your mind to wander and be curious about your environment. Synchronicity exists all around us if you only have eyes to see it.
That's a Carl Jung quote, if I'm not mistaken. Exactly. And what I would say to our listeners, again, is that understand that it's a necessary part of life.
It's a beautiful part of life. It's like, I think it's one of the most exciting parts of life, to be honest.
Right. But again, I think some people wait for it to happen, right?
Yeah.
What we're saying is that you don't want to be waiting for it to happen. For example, one of the great sages, spiritual giants, the Baal Shem Tov, said, again, that you really need to test this. Meaning, so he uses the example, if you're on the right path, it means that something you're thinking about, that same day, you'll open up a book of wisdom and it will have a lesson, that same lesson for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the ways to know that you're actually on the right path. If you're not getting these synchronicities, you should stop. It's not like, oh, I'm not lucky enough to get them now, maybe in a week, or maybe it happens to be once a month. It's actually something that's a very important test of your spiritual development. If you are developing spiritually, you're going to see more synchronicities. And I'd like to share a story from actually one of our friends, one of our teachers in Berlin, in Germany. He shared this story with us this week, and I thought it was so beautiful. Mm. So many of our listeners probably know that one of the fundamental works of Kabbalah, written about 2,000 years ago, is called the Zorer. It's a very important, one of the most important spiritual books ever written. And we use it to study. We also use it for messages, for synchronicity. So one of his students in Berlin had a very difficult, and again, a lot of details to the story, but had a very difficult relation with her father when she was younger. So much so that they were almost estranged. They weren't, they never spoke about what happened. They had a fraught relationship. And as
to this day.
Mm-hmm. And as she begins studying Kabbalah, begins studying spirituality, she comes to her teacher and she says, should I have a conversation with my father? We never spoke about, what happened. And I just sort of held this resentment, tremendous amount of resentment towards him. And I was, in her mind, she was going to continue her life basically estranged from her father, never talking about what happened. And as I think often the correct spiritual message, he told her, I think if you can, you should try to fix it. No guarantees you will, no guarantees. I think you should probably push yourself. She didn't want to. Have a conversation with him. Go visit him, have a conversation with him. And he said to her, but by the way, make sure if you go and do this, take a zorer with you. Because we know that this book has energy, has light in it. If you're going to do something important, something difficult, you want to have it with you. So she goes to her father's house and she's having second thoughts. Should she not? She puts the zorer on the table, and her dad said, something to the effect that, he felt energy from that book. And she saw that as a sign that she should have the conversation. But she still wasn't sure. And she opens up, our teacher told her, open up the zorer, random, right? She opens it up, and there's a story where one of the great sages is told by another of his friends, you should go to your father. And she saw that.
That's another sign, yeah.
As the exact sign. Long story short, she went there, she had this conversation with her father, it opened things up. It was a very positive interaction. I mean, again, just think about it. What are the chances she was going to randomly open up to a section from thousands and thousands of pages that tells a story of one man telling the other, go to your father. And this is the idea. The idea is that we need these messages.
And the conversation went very well. And I think they're on the road to repairing.
And by the way, even if it didn't, my point, yes, right. But the point is,
I know, but people might want to know how it turned out.
Yes, it did go very well. What we're asking, or hopefully inspiring our listeners, is that I need this, you need this, and do everything that you can with everything that we share in this podcast to both open yourself up and look and find the proper way to interpret and be aligned in such a way that you are able to receive these messages. You need them. And this is what, I don't know if the word is guarantees, but makes it easier to be going in the right ways, to be making the right decisions, to be having the right conversations in life. So I'd like to share an email from one of our listeners. And this is, sort of a story within a story, but I think it's very interesting. It just goes to show you, and me and you often have this conversation that, we don't know all the people who are listening to this podcast, thousands upon thousands of people all over the world. But I reread almost all the emails that come to us. And I just find it so inspiring. You know, people in different times in their life, different places in the world are in some ways being inspired, getting light from this. You know, no coincidence there too. So, dear Michael and Monica, so many of your stories and lectures over the years have inspired me. It's hard to choose just one to discuss now. One of my first experiences was Monica's anger, apology, and forgiveness lecture. Do you remember that one?
I do. It was a long time ago.
Let me tell you, it was life-changing. It came to me at the perfect time and has stuck with me for a long time. Right? You don't, right? I think it's so beautiful, right? You give this lecture and you hope that people are inspired in the moment. Here, Josh is telling you that not only was it impactful in the moment, it actually stayed with him throughout life, which I think is so beautiful. Years later, Monica spoke on kindness. She told a wonderfully funny story about your daughter's babysitter and a winter glove. Sure, we all chuckled at the silliness of the story, but the message really stuck with me. During our stay in New York City, I encountered a man on the street with his dog, and he was asking people for help. The only cash I had with me was a $20 bill. I thought to myself, I can't give this man a whole $20 bill. That's insane. He's just going to waste it. I need it more. After everything was said and done, and we were back home from New York City, I realized I still had the $20 in my pocket. Mm-hmm. I didn't need it after all. I felt so bad that I didn't give it to that man, that I was being selfish at a time when I should have shown kindness. The Creator gave me a test, and I felt like I failed. It was then that I decided to take spirituality more seriously. Mm-hmm. Interesting, right? Mm-hmm. It is the failure, right? No coincidence, that brought him to take his spirituality more seriously. I want to be a kinder person. The Creator was trying to tell me something for so long, but I only listened to what I wanted to hear. Mm-hmm. When I heard on your podcast that you and Abigail had a new children's book coming out, and it was based on the story of the babysitter and that glove, I immediately smiled and began a list in my head of children and adults that are going to need to read this book.
I love that. Very synchronistic.
Exactly. I wanted quickly to thank you for your work and tell you how excited I am for this next book. I look forward to your next Spiritually Hungry topic and hopefully to catch you both again live in person for another life-changing lecture. No pressure.
I love
and light to you both. All the best, Josh.
Thanks, Josh. That got me thinking. I wonder when Tale of the Other Glove comes out, if we have people, like we do a challenge and they write in like how they either nailed it or failed it in terms of giving to somebody who was less fortunate or in this area, right? Because
Josh can share his
inspiring story. Yeah.
Really beautiful. And
Josh is starting a movement.
Yes. And also inspiring all of us and all of our listeners. And so this is a good time to remind our listeners to write comment stories, failures, and inspirations to Monica and Michael at spirituallyhungry.life. Monica and Michael at spirituallyhungry.life. And as always, share this podcast with everybody you know. Go to Apple Podcasts, click 5-star reviews, write positive reviews, and inspire others with this inspiration. And share this with everybody you know. As always, we hope you enjoyed listening to this podcast as much as we enjoyed recording it.
Stay spiritually hungry.